Yeah, I couldn't talk about that stone there because the wind, it is so windy today that you wouldn't have heard it. So I will translate that stone for you and into English. And on that stone it said, Asvalde, an honourable lad, erected this stone in memory of his brother Alver. Wooden-legged Söner carved the inscription. So the guy that carved the inscriptions on that runestone was a wooden-legged man. And it says, Skoge betrayed the innocent one. So that was probably a murder that took place there on that Viking runestone. Now that's one of the few we have on the island that is not Christian. It's during the transition period between Christianity from turning into Christians. That one. I will leave a description down below about that one stone. That is dated around the year 1000. I'm not sure completely off the top of my head. And it's very hard to actually just translate the runes straight from the actual signs to English, or even Danish for that matter. You have to transliterate them to normalization from the old language, and then you can translate it to the new languages. Now, before I start doing videos on the Danish Runestones, I'll just give you a little insight to what they are. A runestone is something that was written in Futhark, younger Futhark, during the Viking era. A runestone is not a gravestone. A runestone is like a memorial stone, or a monument, if you like. People often ask, you know, at these church places and around the place where there are runestones, is there Vikings buried there? No, there is no Vikings buried on the runestones. The runestones first started to pop up in the year 700 in Denmark. I'm talking about Denmark now. I'm not talking about Norway or places, other places. I'm talking about Denmark. The first Viking runestone started at the start of 700, and it phased out about the year 1100, and a bit after 1100 you still have the odd runestone that is dated 1150, I believe. Here on Bornholm we have, and these would have been raised in memory of somebody that maybe they drowned at sea along with their ship's crew. You could have had one that was murdered, like the one I showed you before. You could have had one that was died in a battle somewhere else in Scandinavia or in England or wherever. There are so many runestones that tells the story, and most of those that really understand the Viking history and that they know the only real truth is what is written on a runestone or what you find at digs. Let's say the Viking sagas, you know. What is a Viking saga? a classic one for that answer is on Iceland and and of course in Viking lands of Scandinavia. It was stories. You know, they would have told them at their feasts, or they would have told them at the, stories at night time. I mean, we didn't have tellies or anything like that, televisions. So they would tell stories. And this was word stories. This was not written down stories. And these were passed on to generations. And then when Christianity hit, i.e. let's talk about Iceland, for example, they started to write the sagas down after Christianity hit their Iceland. And obviously, you know, as old stories are, if you tell your neighbor something, and your neighbor then tells his neighbor something, and he tells his work friend something, the story gets exaggerated. So there is some great sagas out there with good stories, but are they true? That remains the question, as Hamlet said, you know. But they make for good reading, and a lot of it gives you a good insight to how the Vikings maybe lived, and how they fought, and how they built ships, and what gods they preached. Because you won't find that on a runestone. You look at a heathen runestone or a non-Christian runestone, there is not much mention of the old gods on their runestones. It's more family, in memory of my father, in memory of their son, in memory of their mother, or whatever. And where they died, and how they died, and what battle they fought in. It would be on there as well. And so they put these runestone stories what are on the stones, and they started to talk about them maybe in houses during the Viking era, and it was passed on down the family, but it wasn't written down, it was told as stories, and through the generation obviously it got exaggerated and pumped up, you know. Did the transition period between the non-Christian and the Christian, did it go peacefully? The church would like to tell you it did go peacefully, but I'm not so sure myself. I'm not going to argue with that, because I wasn't alive when that transition period happened. But the church would like you to believe that it went very peacefully. I'm not so sure, because you had a lot of conflicts between Harald Bluetooth and the other Vikings. The Harald Bluetooth, or Harald Blåtand, he was the one that really and truly started to turn the Danes into Christians, and he invited monks over, and he sent monks to different parts of his lands to preach the new religion. In fact, his runestone, the Jelling, is the most famous runestone in Denmark. The reason being that, as well, is on the back of it there is a picture, and that picture is on every passport in Denmark. It's a Danish passport. That's the birth certificate of Denmark. Harald Blåtand's Jelling stone. I will be getting into all of the Danish Viking runestones as I go along. In between I will be doing other videos, but occasionally I will do talk about the Viking runestones in Denmark. What was Denmark back then? What is a Viking runestone from Denmark? Well, they were in Halland, Blekinge, and Skåne, which is now Sweden, and up in Hedeby and Slesvig, which is now North Germany. and on Bornholm, and of course mainland Denmark. These are what they class as the Danish Runestones. And there we have 260 different Runestones.